All right, welcome to the second half of our video number 3 on dinosaurs in the Bible. In this section, we're going to talk about dinosaurs that are still living. The Bible teaches there was a canopy of water when God first made the earth. We covered that on video number 2. And dinosaurs lived with man in the original creation. They were just big lizards, giant reptiles. They always lived with man. They did not live millions of years ago. And there's ample evidence throughout history that dinosaurs have lived with man, from Ica stones and cave drawings and all sorts of legends of dragons. But what about dinosaurs still alive? Could it be that there are a few of them still around? Most of the textbooks say dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. Now just hold on a minute. They don't know that. In Job chapter 40, it describes an animal called Behemoth, and it says he lives under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens, the swamp. Well, the biggest swamp in the world is in the middle of Africa, 55,000 square miles. And there have been many reports of people citing dinosaurs still living in that swamp. The Congo swamp was taken over by Belgium in 1885. From early 1700s, actually, when the missionaries went into that swamp, they reported strange animals, like dinosaurs. This article appeared in the New York Herald in 1910. After some explorers came back from Africa, they said there could be dinosaurs still alive in the swamp in Africa. This article appeared in the Saturday Evening Post, 1948. There could be dinosaurs still living. In 1980, Roy Mackal went there and reported dinosaurs still living. A South African big game hunter returned from a trip to Angola and announced to the Cape Town newspaper that there was an animal of large dimensions, the description of which could only fit a dinosaur. The natives called it the Chippewa. Over in Central African Republic, they have a different name for it, Nguri, depending on their language, of course. Roy Mackal went there in 1980. He's University of Chicago microbiology professor. He's now retired, lives in California. He went back in 81 and spent $250,000 on the expedition. He came out saying, folks, there are dinosaurs still living. He wrote a book about it, The Living Dinosaur, in search of Mokele Mbembe. They say the swamp is the most miserable place in the world. Mosquitoes land on you at the rate of about 1,000 per hour the entire time you're there. Relentless attack of mosquitoes, swarming around you like dust. The natives report an animal called Mahamba, which is a crocodile that gets up to 50 feet long. When Dr. Mackal showed them a picture of an apatosaurus, they said, oh, that's a Mokele Mbembe. Dr. Mackal said, fellas, that's a dinosaur. They've been dead for 70 million years. And the natives said, we're sorry, we didn't know about that. See, we've never been to America to learn about evolution. All we know is we see them out there in the swamp once in a while. Now, they're not very big. They're about 20 feet long, nose to tail. It's a lot smaller than the fossils we find of them, but they're still the same kind of creature, a dinosaur. The natives report that these animals live underwater. They are very rarely seen. Even the folks who live there very rarely see them because they're active at night, and the natives do not go out at night. They're scared enough to go out in the daytime in that swamp over there. But these animals are active at night, generally, though sometimes they're seen early in the morning. They live underwater. They stick their necks out and get plants along the side of the river called the molombo plant. That seems to be their favorite food. Here's a picture of Dr. Mackal showing a dinosaur footprint where they came out of the water on shore to get more of these molombo plants. Missionary Eugene Thomas was in the swamp for 42 years. Here's his phone number in Ohio. He's retired now. He said he had 2 pygmies in his church that helped kill and eat one of these creatures in the late 50s. Dinosaurs still alive? Marcelina Agnagna is a biologist from the Congo. He went into the swamp and said, man, I saw one myself, and there's what it looked like. He drew a sketch on the chalkboard. Dinosaur still alive. There have been many reports in this swamp of people citing these creatures. There's a World Explorer magazine that has a lot of articles about people who go into the swamp to see dinosaurs still living. They say the humidity is terrible, and most of your equipment will be destroyed very quickly by the high humidity. It's very difficult. It's hard enough just to survive going through the swamp. I mean, there are no highways anywhere and no 911. Well, you can call, but nobody's going to answer. They say you can average about 1 mile per hour traveling through this swamp. If I told you you had to survey the entire state of Arkansas at 1 mile per hour, you better bring a lunch. You're going to be there a while. They describe this creature as having a long neck and a small head. Patasaurus. One group got an audio tape of it making a roaring sound, sort of like a gecko lizard makes when its skin flaps out on its throat, and it flaps back. They got 5 minutes of this roaring sound. I've got a tape of it at home somewhere. I haven't been able to locate it for a while. But here's an article from the Boston Herald about people going to the African swamp to look for a living dinosaur. There have been just many, many expeditions into there. Cryptozoology.st is a website about creatures still living. The natives say these animals live in caves or underwater, and they're very rarely seen. You get to see them maybe once in a while. William Gibbons has been to the swamp 4 times. He and I wrote this book together, Claws, Jaws, and Dinosaurs, a book for junior high age about dinosaurs still living. Interesting. He said in one swamp they call it Lakila Mbembe. Here's what William Gibbons said. According to our guide, Pierre Sima, we were the first white men to actually penetrate the forest and swamps bordering the Bumba River. Our informants, almost all of them Baka pygmies, with the exception of one elderly Muslim Cameroonian, are perfectly familiar with all the known and unknown animals of the forest and swamps. While they do not regard Lokela Mbembe as being an unusual animal, they do fear the creature because of its ferocity in attacking hippos, elephants, and even crocodiles. The animal appears to be completely intolerant of any other large creature that shares the river and controls large stretches of the river, particularly those areas where its food supply is present. And call William Gibbons, he's been there 4 times. They have different names for this creature depending on their local language. Missionary Cal Bombay, he works for the 100 Huntley Street in Toronto, Canada, said he was a missionary in the Kenya part of Africa for years, and he and his wife saw one of these creatures, but the plates on the back were bigger. Down in the Amazon jungle in South America, they've got a huge swamp down there. Amazon jungle is known, of course, for its high humidity and tremendous plant growth. Back in 1907, Colonel Fawcett from the British Army went down there to survey the boundary between Peru and Brazil. He was an officer in the Royal Engineers, and everybody said he's a meticulous recorder of facts. He went to the Beni swamps and reported sighting a Diplodocus. This is 1907, not 70 million years ago. The natives said, oh yeah, that's the creature that lives out in the swamp. You know, don't go near him. His son, Brian Fawcett, made pictures, a sketch here, of the footprints that they found on the side of the river. Large, 3-toed saurian, dinosaur, footprints. Could there be some still around? In 1883, this article appeared in Scientific American, before they started censoring out anything that goes against the evolution theory. Here's the article from 1883. It is 12 meters long from snout to the point of its tail, which latter is flattened. Found this giant animal. Here's the article, Scientific American. It said the Brazilian ministers at La Paz, Bolivia, had remitted to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Rio photographs of drawings of an extraordinary saurian killed on the Beni after receiving 36 balls. By order of the President of Bolivia, the dried body, which had been preserved in Asuncion, was sent to La Paz. It's 12 meters long from snout to the point of the tail, which latter is flattened, besides the anterior head. Describes the creature here. The heads look like a dog. They said it had 3 look-like formed heads. Nobody knew for sure what they meant by that, but that's maybe in translation. They said the legs and belly and lower part of the throat appeared defended by a kind of scale armor, and all the back is protected by a still thicker and double cuirass, starting from behind the ears of the anterior head and continuing to the tail. The neck is long and the belly large and almost dragging on the ground. Professor Gilvetti, who examined the beast, thinks it is not a monster, but a member of a rare and almost lost species, as the Indians in some parts of Bolivia use small earthen vases of identical shape and probably copied from nature. Dinosaurs still alive? Snakes down there get pretty big, I know that. Here's a picture of a snake that swallowed a native who fell asleep on the job. Snakes get pretty big too, folks, you know. Colonel Fawcett reported he shot and killed a 62-foot anaconda snake. That's a big snake. The natives said, Colonel, you should see the big ones. In 1933, the officials from the Brazil-Colombia Boundary Commission killed a 98-foot snake, 2 feet in diameter. The snake weighed 2 tons. That's a big snake. A cook from the hotel in Amazon jungle said he saw a 100-foot snake which the military had hunted down and killed after it had eaten 2 soldiers. The snake's head was 2 feet long. That's a good-sized snake. In 1948, this picture was taken, published in 1949, but of a giant snake floating down the Amazon River. Nobody poked it to see if it was alive, but they claimed it was 150 feet long. Of course, tough to tell, something floating in the river, but that's still a pretty good-sized snake. One of my former students was a missionary down there in Brazil. He said, Brother Hovind, where we're at, in the middle part of Brazil, the Amazon River is 9 miles wide. That's a big river. There's a lake up in Scotland called Loch Ness. Has anybody ever heard of Loch Ness before? Many folks claim they have seen the Loch Ness monster. Loch Ness is 24 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, and nearly 1,000 feet deep in places. A very deep lake. In 1933, they took dynamite and blasted the rocks away to make a roadbed on the side of the mountain. Now, before 1933, if you wanted to see Loch Ness, you had to climb up the mountain and go down the other side, or start at the river and go 7 miles upriver to get into the lake. Very sparsely populated. So in 1933, they put this highway along the edge of the lake. Right away, folks began reporting the Loch Ness monster. It had been seen before that numerous times and reported, but everybody thought it's just a local legend. You know, these guys are drinking too much whiskey or something. In 1933, the first year the road was done, there were 52 separate sightings of the Loch Ness monster. This author said there have been 9,000 reported sightings of the Loch Ness monster. Today it's over 11,000. This book was written back in the 60s. Of the 11,000 sightings, no doubt some are hoaxes and frauds. Okay, I wouldn't question that. I don't say they're all legitimate. But some very reputable folks claim they have seen the Loch Ness monster. People like Sir Peter Scott, a member of Parliament. He says, I've seen it. He said, I think it's a plesiosaurus. They've got a website, lochness.co.uk. A plesiosaur is a long-necked swimming dinosaur. I've got one on the table right here. That is what the plesiosaur is supposed to look like. Almost everyone that sees Nessie says it's a plesiosaur. I've read probably 250 books just about Loch Ness and Loch Ness Monster. This one author said, others insist Nessie must be a plesiosaur. There's one thing wrong with this theory. Plesiosaurs became extinct 70 million years ago. Now, hold on a minute. Do you see how his training in school has crippled him to doing research? The evolution theory is a great hindrance to intelligent research. It's not a help. It's a hindrance. And if scientists were allowed to do research without being shackled by that dumb theory, I think we'd be much further ahead in science. A lot of things are being hindered by that silly theory. Arthur Grant was a veterinarian student. He nearly ran into Nessie on his motorcycle. He was crossing the road in front of him. Here's what Arthur said about it after almost hitting it. He said, I had a splendid view of the object. In fact, I almost struck it with my motorcycle. It had a long neck and oval-shaped eyes on top of a small head. The tail would be from 5 to 6 feet long and very powerful. The curious thing about it was that the end was rounded off. It did not come to a point. The total length of the animal would be 15 to 20 feet. Knowing something of natural history, I can say that I have never seen anything in my life like the animal I saw. It looked like a hybrid. I jumped off my cycle and followed the animal, which had entered the loch with great speed. There was a huge splash from the disturbance of the surface. It had evidently made away before I reached the shore. By Arthur Grant. There's the sketch he drew of the creature that he saw crossing the road right in front of his motorcycle. The guy's a veterinarian student. He ought to know something about animals. Okay? He said, that's what I saw. Alexander Campbell was the game warden for Loch Ness for 47 years. He said he saw Nessie 18 times. First sighting back in the 1930s. Here's the sketch Alexander Campbell drew of the creature that he saw in Loch Ness. Cages have been built to try to capture the Loch Ness monster. Many folks have drawn sketches of what they've seen. Not too many photographs in existence, but lots of folks claim they've seen the Loch Ness monster. The Spicer family said they saw it crossing the road with a sheep in its mouth. Several reports like that. There are 3 sightings that I read about where somebody saw babies of the Loch Ness monster, they assume. This fella got a picture of a back sticking out of the water and a neck off to the far right. When they published this picture in Reader's Digest, they cropped off the head. You know, Reader's Digest, condensed edition. All they show is the back sticking out of the water, but that photograph is on the table right here from Reader's Digest, Strange Stories, Amazing Facts. MacLeod said he saw the Loch Ness monster He watched it through his binoculars for 9 minutes and drew this sketch of what he saw. He said his neck was long and it moved back and forth like a snake about to strike. After watching it for 9 minutes, that's the picture he drew of the creature in Loch Ness. Many folks report this creature, 11,000 of them. World Book Encyclopedia paid a fellow to bring a submarine from America over to Loch Ness and put it in the lake. There have been 3 submarine attempts. They say the water is like being in a giant mud puddle. It's very black, murky water. You go down a few feet and everything's black. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And it's 900 feet deep in places. The fellow Dan Taylor from Hardyville, South Carolina, built the mini-sub. He said, Nessie is pretty elusive. I thought I got her. Something was lying on the bottom and the wash from it threw my submarine way off course. Japanese put 24 boats in Loch Ness, sailed the entire length of the lake, taking sonar pictures of the whole bottom. First time in 1987 that the bottom of Loch Ness was mapped. They said the bottom is wrinkled up like a raisin. They had a sonar curtain as they scanned down this thing, and they said they picked up some large objects 300 feet down but couldn't tell what they were. Large objects that were moving, but they couldn't tell what they were with the sonar from that great distance. They said the bottom, though, is wrinkled up like a raisin with many places to hide, including, apparently, caves going back into the mountains. Maybe there are airlocks where the creature goes in the cave and comes up and has can breathe up in there. Don't know. Certainly a possibility to consider. Academy of Applied Science actually got a picture of a diamond-shaped flipper underwater. They did this with sonar-activated camera. They put it in 80 feet deep water with the camera and sonar and flash, so that if something swam in front, it would flash and take pictures. After getting pictures of all sorts of fish going by, they got this picture of a giant animal, the flipper on the side of its body. This article and picture appeared in Reader's Digest, showing Nessie with its mouth open. Many people report seeing humps sticking out of the water. The surgeon's photo is now claimed to be a fake, and it could indeed be a fake, I don't know. But it's interesting to me that everybody waited till the last guy died to announce it's a fake. They say the nephew of the surgeon on his deathbed confessed it was a fake. Well, we're taking their word for it. I mean, it may be true that it is a fake, I don't know, but it's interesting they waited till the last guy died. But Loch Ness is not the only lake. There are 7 other lakes reporting creatures like this. Loch Lochy, Loch Morag, Loch Shiel. There's the Cornwallis sea serpent. You're from Cornwallis area, right? This is what I was telling you about. The creature down there called Morgwar, the Cornish sea serpent. Many folks claim they have seen this creature. In the English Channel, there have been many reports of a creature called the English Channel sea serpent. In 1749, a marine monster was caught in England, resembling, in some degree, an alligator, having 2 large fins which serve for swimming or flying. It had 2 legs terminating in hoofs like those of an ass. Its body was covered with impenetrable scales. It had 5 rows of teeth. It appeared in the dictionary or encyclopedia or something in the late 1700s. This creature washed up on the beach in Normandy, France. It was 35 feet long. 2 professors from Paris Natural History Museum analyzed the creature and said it was definitely not a whale, not a sea cow. It's possible we are in the presence of an unknown species, they said. This animal swam past a boat in Brazil, off the coast of Brazil, in the Atlantic Ocean. 2 experienced naturalists on board reported the creature had a dorsal fin 6 feet long and 2 feet high, a small head on top of a neck 7 or 8 feet long in front of the fin. They published it in an article in 1905. This fellow said, I saw swimming parallel to the ship underwater a curious creature around 4 feet long with a long neck and large flippers. I believe, as did my wife who also saw it, that it was a young plesiosaurus. A Queensland correspondent wrote me that a young plesiosaur was taken in a net off Mudgee Beach, Australia. He sent me a sketch which is like the one I myself saw off the coast of Greece. That's Sir Arthur Doyle. In New Zealand, there's a fishing place off to the right called the, I forget the name of it now, but the water's only 900 feet deep. The rest of the ocean's a lot deeper than that. But the Japanese do a lot of fishing right there. They were dragging their net 900 feet down when they pulled this creature up in their net. It was 32 feet long, 4,000 pounds, and had apparently 4 big flippers. It had a fin running down its back. It smelled horribly. When they set it down on the deck, it broke in half, and pus oozed out everywhere and stunk up the whole boat. And so they said, fellas, we don't know what it is, but we're throwing it back. We're not going to haul this thing back to Japan. You know how far it is from New Zealand to Japan at 12 miles an hour? So they shoved it overboard. But the naturalist on board made a sketch of what he thought it might have looked like. And they even made a special stamp for Japanese mail, 1977. Now, some American scientists who never saw the creature said, well, the samples they took of the skin, and they did save some skin samples, by the way, when they analyzed them, the protein was 96% similar to basking shark. And they said, see, that proves it's a shark. No, it doesn't prove it's a shark. It might have been a basking shark, I don't know. But the fellows who had it in their hands said, no, it's not a shark. We know what sharks are. It's a plesiosaurus. By the way, they make a big deal about apes and humans being 98% similar in their DNA, and yet they're very different creatures, right? And nobody's ever seen plesiosaur protein to know what it is supposed to look like. So just because it's 96% similar does not mean it is not a different creature. Protein called elastidin is one identified in the carcass. Okay? This creature was seen in Russia in a big lake up there. It's called Mystery of the Lake. What looked like a huge dinosaur washed up on Russia's north coast in 1994. The carcass was 39 feet long. Japan, on the upper island and one of the lower islands, has reports of a creature similar to Loch Ness Monster. On Lake Ikeda, they call the creature Issy. In China, they've got one they call a USO, unidentified swimming object. Sweden has had many reports of a creature in this lake up in central Sweden. 150 times it's been seen by 450 people since 1635. Canada has many reported lake monsters. We have the book on our website or on our table out here if you want to get hold of this book, Canada's Lake Monsters. This article says, Nessie's Canadian cousin. Scientists are believers. They're talking about the Ogopogo. The Ogopogo is the name they've given to the creature that lives in Lake Okanagan, just north of Spokane, Washington. In this huge lake, 80 miles long. Arlene Gall has spent a lifetime studying this. Now, she does not necessarily believe in creation, or at least young earth creation. You know, she goes through all these sightings of these dinosaurs in this lake and says, wow, maybe one survived for millions of years. Man, maybe the Earth's not millions of years old. You know, there's another way to look at this. In this article by Mary Moon, it says right here, they were the latest among thousands to see something strange in this 80-mile-long lake in southern British Columbia. This article says, creature shows up in sonar scan, 40 to 50 feet long. A lake swimmer said he saw the creature swimming under him. It was 20 to 30 feet long. A big eye came up and looked at him while he's swimming across Lake Okanagan. Now that would make you think twice, wouldn't it? We sell this book called Cadborosaurus about the Cadboro Bay monster, which is up north of Seattle. Cadboro Bay. Caddy, as it's called, has been seen as far south as Oregon, up to British Columbia. Professor LeBlond at University of British Columbia published a paper on Caddy at a meeting of Canadian and American Societies of Zoology. The remains of a 3-meter-long carcass of an apparent juvenile were discovered in the stomach of a sperm whale. Adult caddies get about 22 feet long. They say the creature has a long neck and a short-pointed front flippers. A couple of pilots told me they have seen the creature in that lake. One guy caught a baby one in his dip net. It was 18 inches long. He pulled it up, put it in a bucket. He had to sleep that night on the lake in his boat. He just dropped anchor and slept out there. He said he could hear the creature scratching the side of the bucket all night trying to get out. And he didn't have a camera to take a picture, but he just drew a sketch and then threw it overboard. That's the sketch he drew right there of the creature he saw, the baby caddy that he captured. It's in the book Cadborosaurus. These 4 men claimed their boat was chased by a dinosaur. So I went up and interviewed one of them. The other 3 refused to talk about it. I interviewed this man for nearly an hour. I've got the interview on audio tape. Here's what he said. They were fishing at Cape Sable Island, Nova Scotia. I preached on that Cape Sable Island at a church up there. I met with him. His name is Keith Ross. He was 67 at the time. He said he'd been fishing out there since he's 5 years old. It's a fishing village. That's what everybody does up there, just about. He said the creature was 40 to 50 feet long when it chased their boat for 1 to 2 miles, with its head out of the water about 15 feet, so it's not a fish. It had a wide mouth and 4-foot tusks like a walrus, as well as other pointed sharp teeth about the size of his finger. I showed him a plesiosaur. He said it was close but not exact. What he saw had a 2-foot thick, 8 to 9 foot long neck and 9-inch diameter eyes on the side of the head, so it's not a fish. Set at an angle from the front, not on the side like a fish, I'm sorry. He could see no visible means of propulsion as it swam toward him. It was grayish-brown, covered in barnacles, and rough-textured, and did not appear to have scales. He said they were 6 miles south of Cape Sable Island, Nova Scotia. The water is 180 feet deep and flat calm. He said, I don't want to see it again. That's what he told me when I interviewed him. This thing washed up on the beach in Newfoundland several months ago. Nobody has a clue what it is or was. Again, typically they'll say, oh, it's a basking shark, and it could be, I don't know. But that's always their excuse to dismiss it. I think, though, we need to look at this a little more objectively to say dinosaurs probably always lived with man, and there could be a few stragglers still around. This book is available from our website also about monsters found in North America. I interviewed this man for 3 hours when I preached in Toronto, or in Quebec, Canada. Jacques Beauvais, he speaks French, is his name. There's his address right here on the table. His website is tiftarea.com, Lake Monster. He collects sightings of the Lake Memphremagog monster. Lake Memphremagog goes out of Vermont up into Quebec, Canada. Many folks claim they have seen the Lake Memphremagog monster. Something has been seen in the Potomac River. It resembles the Loch Ness monster. Something's been seen on Block Island, which is south of Rhode Island. It actually belongs to Rhode Island. It's a part of the state there. This creature washed up on the beach. It was 14 feet long. Nobody knows what it was, and someone stole the bones. So now it's disappeared. In Lake Erie, many folks report a creature like Loch Ness monster in Lake Erie. It gets in the newspaper once in a while. Erie's Bessie matches Nessie. They describe the creature as black, about 35 feet long, and a snake-like head. This article came out in the paper, said, does Nessie have a cousin in Lake Erie? How about this article? Boaters spot the Erie monster. There's renewed speculation a large serpent-like creature makes Lake Erie its home. John Lyles, a Huron charter boat captain, and his wife Holly, said they saw the snake-like creature about 2 nautical miles from Kelly's Island on July 12th while aboard the 16-meter charter boat they run. Lyles said it moved up and down, not side to side like a snake. It was black or dark brown and humped its body 50 centimeters, 20 inches above the water. Estimated the length to be about 5 to 8 meters or 16 to 25 feet. I talked to John Kraft. I interviewed him. He photographed the Lake Erie monster. He said they were set up to take pictures of the sunset when this creature came swimming by with its head sticking out of the water. He got his camera lens put together real quick, and by the time he got zoomed in on it, the head was down. All he got was the back. He said, sorry, Brother Hovind, I didn't get the head out of the water, but that's what I saw. I interviewed him up in Pennsylvania. I talked with Pete Peterson. He runs the L&D bait shop. He's also a taxidermist. Here's his phone number right here. He told me he was walking on the beach of Lake Erie 6 years earlier and found a dead baby creature. It was 3 feet long, had 4 flippers and a small head and a long neck. He brought it back and mounted it. He's a taxidermist. That's the creature. Nobody has a clue what it was. Carl Baugh bought it. It's in his museum in Texas, but he hasn't put it on display yet because he doesn't know what it is either. He's trying to raise the money to get a DNA sampling to find out it's not a hoax. You know, we don't know for sure, but interesting, whatever it is. In Scituate Harbor, Massachusetts, in 1970, this thing washed up on the beach. It smelled horribly. You could smell it for 3 miles away. I went to Scituate Harbor and interviewed the sheriff. He said, Mr. Hovind, I was one of the first people on the scene at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when this thing washed ashore. We got calls right away. Something stinks out here. He said, I'm telling you, that was a sea monster. He said, some rock and roll station announced, hey, there's a sea monster laying on the beach, and people came from miles around, jammed the streets, blocked traffic in the middle of the night in Scituate Harbor, sleepy little town. Everybody went out there with a hatchet or butcher knife and cut off a piece to have a piece of the sea monster as a souvenir. By the time they got photographs of it, it was all beat up. And again, the folks claimed it was a basking shark, and they argued about it. Quite a few articles written about this creature, though. This man said, "I doubt that duels will be fought on the proper name for the monster. The experts at Woods Hole stating it is a basking shark, and Dr. John Hannon positively refusing to accept anything but a real sea serpent." And the health department said, "We don't care what it is. It stinks. It's going to contaminate the whole village," and they put dynamite under it and blew it out back into the water, into pieces. What are you going to do with, 10 tons of rotting meat laying on your beach? In 1925 in California, this creature washed up on the beach. California's Nessie. I talked to the man who wrote this article, William Roberts. He said, "Brother Hovind, it's really strange. I went to Berkeley to the archives, and I got pictures of this creature laying on the beach. There were many excellent photographs of this creature." He said, "When I published my article in Skin Diver magazine, 1989, I got so many calls, people said, 'Wow, that's amazing. Do another article.' He said, 'I went back to Berkeley to the archives, and the pictures were gone, and there was no record of them ever existing.'" Kind of strange. Some people really like that evolution theory, and anything that rocks the boat has to be quietly, swept under the rug. But you can see the nose coming down to the bottom of the screen, the eyeball on the right. The guy behind him has a rifle, just in case it moves again. The neck was 20 feet long. And I told you I got that letter from the atheist. He said, "You're so dumb, Hovind. Don't you know that was a whale?" I just wrote back and said, "Please show me any neck on a whale. Just exactly where is the neck on a whale?" It's not a whale. The people who examined it, like the president of the Natural History Society, said, "My examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth, the head is large, the neck 20 feet long. I would call it a type of plesiosaurus." During the 1930s and 40s, people were still reporting these creatures off the coast of California. The fishing fleet reported them. One boat captain said their whole crew of 12 men saw this creature. One report described the creature as surfacing near a fishing boat and staring at the crew with large, baleful eyes from a rounded head that topped a long, slender neck that stuck out of the water a distance of 8 or more feet. This book we sell, Monsters, Mysterious Sea Monsters. Now, most of these books are written by people who do not necessarily believe in creation. They're very fascinating stories. They do a good research and then come to the wrong conclusion. That maybe dinosaurs survived for millions of years. It never dawns on them to think, hey, maybe our theory's wrong, about millions of years. But in 1969 in New York, fishermen nearly dropped their rods when a giant creature swam under the bridge in New York City. It was chased by the harbor police. The creature was much bigger than a whale. The police chased it and lost track of it. There are reports of zeuglodons still living. This is a sort of like a dinosaur-type creature, swims in the water, but has 2 flippers. And the head is like an alligator, great big, huge alligator-like head, but only 2 front flippers. In Newport, Arkansas, in the White River, there were many reports for years of the White River monster. In 1972 was the last sighting of the White River monster. I talked to the man who took the pictures. His name is Cloyce Allen. He said, "Mr. Hovind, I took a whole roll of pictures of that thing because we've been out there fishing for years, and everybody laughed at us, claiming there's a big animal in this water." He said the river was 100 feet deep right there. The White River was in Newport or Jacksonport, Arkansas. It filled in a big rainstorm in 73, I think, and it's only about 50 feet deep now, or at least the last report. But he said, "I had this roll of film, excellent pictures of this creature. I took them to the newspaper office and said, 'Here, I didn't even take them out of the camera. I don't want to be accused of fraud. You guys develop the film and publish the pictures.'" Well, they deal mainly with black and white film at the newspaper, and so they just assumed it was black and white film, and they developed it with black and white developer and ruined the entire roll of color film. They said, "Mr. Warren, we have some bad news. We wrecked your film." He said, "Man, I don't know if I can get more pictures, but I'll try." And he got this photograph showing just the bumps down the back going across the screen there. On the far right would be the head, what he said was the head of this creature. That was like a giant alligator head. But hasn't been seen since 72. In 1973, though, Arkansas designated that stretch of the river as a monster sanctuary. It is unlawful to molest, kill, trample, or harm the White River monster. In Jupiter, Florida, there have been many reports of a creature similar to this, like a plesiosaur, swimming off the coast of Jupiter, Florida. I met this man, and he said, Mr. Hovind, in the 1950s, I was flying off Jupiter, Florida. It was 7 or 8 miles out over the Gulf Stream. The water was glass calm. Suddenly, I saw an animal. Its head came out of the water, and its eyes stayed trained on me as I made another pass. It appeared to be 30-plus feet long. Having seen the creature taken by the Japanese fishing boat, and later the drawing in the National Enquirer, I would say this is the same creature. I did not tell anyone, for fear they would think I was nuts. I was working for Praat & Whitney Aircraft Company with high security. Later, my brother and I caught a pygmy sperm whale for the Miami Sea Aquarium. I hope this will further support your belief. There have been so many reports, and just about everywhere I go, someone will come and say, Brother Hovind, I've seen one, but I never told anybody, because they're going to think you're crazy. There's a lake between New York and Vermont called Lake Champlain, where many folks claim they've seen the Lake Champlain monster. I mean, there have been hundreds of reported sightings of this creature. This book is called Champ, Beyond the Legend. It's out of print now, but if you have an old copy, I'd like to get some more back. We bought every one they had. We sold it till they ran out. This photograph on the front was taken by Sandy Mancy. I went and met with Sandy Mancy, interviewed her. We put the interview of me talking to Sandy at the end of this tape, and you can listen to Sandy. In one of our conversations, I said, Sandy, do you think you saw a dinosaur? She said, no. I know I saw a dinosaur. She and her husband and 2 kids watched it for 10 minutes. When I showed her the plesiosaur, she said, yeah, it looked like that, but the neck was shorter. In 1998, Discover magazine ran this article. It said, in Lake Champlain, 58 passengers aboard the Ethan Allen reported that a creature 30 to 35 feet long with 3 to 5 humps cruised with their boat about 200 feet off the port side for 5 minutes. The skipper said, don't tell me it was a carp or a sturgeon. If it was a fish, it weighed 3,000 or 5,000 pounds. That's what he said about it. The Bible talks about these dragons in the waters, the dragon in the sea. Right here in Pensacola, Florida, back in 1962, 5 teenagers in their late teens went scuba diving to go out to the Massachusetts, the sunken ship in the harbor out here, you know. How many have seen the Massachusetts out there? 1 kid survived. Here's the story he told. He was about 18 years old when this happened. He said, we were in an Air Force rescue raft bound for a sunken ship a few miles off the coast. Midway out, we were caught in a storm and dragged out to sea. When the storm cleared, we were in a dense fog, and we began to hear strange noises, rather like the splashing of a porpoise, also a sickening odor like that of dead fish. The noise got closer to the raft, and we heard a loud hissing sound. Out in the fog, we saw what looked like a long pole about 10 feet high, sticking straight up out of the water. On top was a bulb-like structure. I think he's meaning shaped like a light bulb, round on one end with a pointed on the other end, like the creature. That's my interpretation here. Okay? It bent in the middle and went under. It appeared several more times, getting closer to the raft. The silence was broken once again by something out of the fog. I can only describe it as a high-pitched whine. We panicked. All 5 of us put on our fins and went into the water. Keep together and try for the ship, I yelled. After we were in the water, we became split up in the fog. From behind, I could hear the screams of my comrades, one by one. I got a closer look at the thing just before my last friend went under. The neck was about 12 feet long, brownish green and smooth looking. The head was like a sea turtle, except more elongated. He said the eyes were green with oval pupils. In a different story, because he did several interviews right after this happened, Pensacola News Journal said, we're not going to tell people got eaten by a sea monster. We're just going to publish that they drowned. So that's what the News Journal said. They said, you realize this is, people come here for the beach. What would happen to tourism? Look what happened with the shark attacks. Who wants to go swimming now? In another book, though, this guy said, I don't know how long it was before we heard a scream. It lasted maybe half a minute. Then I heard Warren call, hey, help me, it's got Brad. I've got to get out of here. His voice was cut off abruptly by a short cry. Brad, Warren, hey, where is everybody? I yelled back at the top of my lungs. Larry now swam with Eric and me. Warren and Brad were nowhere in sight. Right next to Eric, that telephone pole-like figure broke water. I could see the long neck and 2 small eyes. The mouth opened and it bent over. It dove on top of Eric, dragging him under. I screamed and began to swim past the ship. My insides were shaking uncontrollably. He was the only survivor. He said, I finally made it to the ship, stayed there the rest of the night. Next morning, swam to shore and was found by the rescue unit. That's the sketch he drew. I found Edward Brian McCleary. He now lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and refuses to talk about it. I called. He said, oh, handed the phone to his wife. She said, Mr. Hovind, you don't understand. I don't know what happened to my husband, but when he was a teenager, something happened in Pensacola, Florida, and he became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And right now he's a recovering alcoholic. He's working in an alcohol rehab center, and he doesn't want to talk about it. I said, okay. But I think if he understood how it all fit into biblical perspective, it would make a lot more sense to him. I was preaching in Fort Walton Beach, and a lady came and said, Mr. Hovind, my son was one of the kids who was eaten. The story you are telling is exactly correct. Happened back in 1962. I told this story in Panama City when I was preaching, and the Lutheran church had sent their youth director to the meeting. He said, Mr. Hovind, I was driving the van for our church, and all of my teenagers and I were going over the bridge into Panama City, and we saw a creature look just like that out in the water in Panama City. Wow. Could it be we've been brainwashed about the idea of dinosaurs living millions of years ago? I mean, is it just possible that maybe God's word is correct and dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago? There have been many reports of pterodactyls still living. I can go 2 days on this, so I'll shorten this down and then we'll close this here. But there are lots of reports of pterodactyls still flying around. In Africa, they call the creature the kangamato. I got a call one day at my office, and this guy said, Mr. Hovind, my name is, and he gave this huge name. He said, I'm from Africa. He said, the people here call me Steve because they can't pronounce my first name. So we called him Steve Romandi. He said, I'm on the Kenya Olympic team. I'm a runner, I think 500 kilometers or something like that. He said, I'm a student going to school at Louisiana State University. He said, I just saw your videotape, and you mentioned pterodactyls are still alive. He said, I didn't know they're called pterodactyls. We call them the kangamato, but you're right, they're still alive. We have them in our village back in Kenya. He said their favorite food to eat is decaying human flesh. So if somebody dies, you have to bury them real deep and put rocks on top, or kangamato will come dig them up and eat them. That's what he told me. Frank Melland, the African explorer, kept hearing about the much-feared creature called the kangamato, said to live in the swamps near Rhodesia at the Belgian Congo. He asked the natives what it was. They told him it was a bird. Not exactly a bird, though, more like a lizard with wings of skin like a bat. When he showed them a picture of a pterodactyl, they said, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's the bat. Kangamato. Right there. So that's showing them a pterodactyl. 2 cowboys shot and killed a pterodactyl, apparently, in Arizona in 1890. They couldn't drag the whole thing back, so they cut off the wingtips and took them back to the local saloon and nailed them up on the wall. So, hey, fellas, what is this? We don't know. Whatever it was, we just killed one out in the desert. Missionary came to me and said, Brother Hovind, I've got people in my church in Venezuela that we try to deal with, these natives down there. They're scared stiff of the giant bat. I kept trying to talk to him. What is this giant bat you're afraid of? Here's the story that he told me. He said this bat was said to capsize canoes and carry off Indians. I met with him in '98. He told me the Indians, terrified of this great bat, had sent one of their bravest men to the head of the river where they killed one of the creatures about 30 years ago and buried it near the Mawada River. When Clint showed the Indians a picture of a pterodactyl, their eyes got big as saucers, and they said, that is the bat. They were identifying this as the creature still alive in the swamps in Venezuela. Even today, he said the Indians will not drink or fish from the river for fear of this creature. There's an island to the left of Borneo, of Java and Papua New Guinea and all this. This island off to the left is called Seram. On some maps, it's spelled with a C, E-R-A-M. But in Indonesia, the natives say there's a creature that has leathery wings, 4.5 feet tall. They call it orang batai, which means man with wings. Like orangutan, this is orang batai, man with wings. Missionaries occasionally report these creatures, active at night, and 3 to 4 foot wingspan, not a bat. Dr. Ball has been down there several times. He's reported that some folks in his expeditions have seen these creatures, and they claim they have a glow to them. They glow in the dark. One theory is it might be bioluminescent organisms are growing in their fur when they live in caves all day. In one area, they call it the Ropin. Mr. Jerry Williams, missionary for 28 years, his sending churches in Bloomington, Illinois, When I was preaching there, he said, Mr. Hovind, the other missionaries that I've talked to that have lived here for a long time, they said, there are still pterodactyls on these islands. But everybody thinks they're crazy. The American soldiers that were fighting in there during World War II reported these creatures. Small pterodactyls in the island of these islands down here all over Indonesia. Charlie Knight in Washington said he saw one of these in 1965. He saw two of them actually circling for almost a minute. Dark brown with a crust on the back of the head. I talked to him in Spokane back in January of 2001. The Indians have legends of the thunderbird. The Sioux Indians reported a giant bird was hit by lightning, fell to the ground. When they found the bones a few days later, the buzzards had already picked it clean to the bones. But they said the wingspan was 20 feet and had a long bony bump on the back of its head. Here's an Indian prayer stick from Colorado. Notice the bump on the back of the head. This is the head of a pterodactyl. Now Henry Ford named a car the Thunderbird, but he put an eagle on the taillight. Henry, it should have been a pterodactyl. You need to study your history just a little more before you name your cars. The French sent some missionaries, explorers, Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet, traveled down the Mississippi in 1675. They stopped where today is the town of Alton, Illinois, by St. Louis. They saw this big bird painted on the cliff. They asked the Indians, they said, what is that big ugly bird? They said, oh, that's a piasol bird. He used to live in the cliff and he would swoop down and pick up small Indians and carry them away. But a great chief killed him using a plan that the Great Spirit gave him. They used to paint this thing on the cliffs. After the Indians were driven out, the white people read these legends of the piasol bird and tried to redraw the picture just from the verbal description. And that's what they came up with. They repainted it every year. Finally, they put this huge metal plaque up there. There's me, 1996. They removed the plaque, but I got my picture underneath it before, I don't know, they were worried it'd come down or something. If you go to Alton, Illinois, you can look up piasol in the phone book. It's amazing. There are 25 listings under piasol. You can go to the crypto dude at AOL.com, has lots of information on Thunderbird paintings found in La Crosse, Wisconsin. People say, Brother Hovind, why do you go around teaching about dinosaurs? Well, for one thing, Satan is using them to teach boys and girls a lie, and it's keeping millions from going to heaven. I think this is the battlefield right here, folks. They're a great evangelistic tool, and Christians are confused about them. They don't know how to put them into their perspective, and it causes them to compromise the plain teaching of the Bible. And I think God ought to get the glory for everything He made. That's why I go around teaching about dinosaurs. If He's the chief of the ways of God, well then God ought to get the glory. When you go to Job chapter 41, there's another whole chapter about another dinosaur called Leviathan. And you can see our videotape on Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon, if you want more on that from Job 41 and 42. But after this story was over, Job 40 and 41, Job was a changed man. He was a new man in chapter 42. And I think God did all this with the dinosaurs to change Job's attitude. And you and I need the same thing once in a while, a little attitude adjustment. See, the problem Job had, same problem we have, he didn't understand who God was. You know, we just glibly pray, our Heavenly Father, do you know who you're talking to? This is the God of the universe. Hey, question, how big is your God? Is your God big enough to tell you what to do and you'll just do it? Does God tell you what kind of clothes to wear? He told the women in 1 Timothy to dress in modest apparel. I mean, do you dress modestly? It's amazing, you know, people go down to the beach down here in Pensacola and wear less than they have on for underwear and don't seem to be embarrassed. Have we gone crazy? Dress modestly. Like my daddy said, if you're not in business, don't advertise. Is God happy with the way you do your hair? 1 Corinthians says it's a shame for a man to have long hair. I read that verse when I was a brand new Christian and thought, wow, I better get mine cut. I was a lifeguard, you know, long, beautiful blonde hair. Oh, I'm cool, you know. Read that verse, said, ooh, I better cut it. So I did. I mean, would you do it if God told you to? So I guess I travel and speak on dinosaurs because I think God used them to change Job's attitude, and God can use them today to change our attitude. I'm sick and tired of these kids being lied to, telling them dinosaurs lived millions of years ago, when they didn't. God created these creatures, and He ought to get the glory for what He did. We get a call or letter every week from somebody getting saved watching a video they got from the public library or the public school library. Our materials are not copyrighted on purpose. Man, we're trying to win the war, not build the castle. Do something, okay? If we can use my material, if it'll help, use it. Some people say, I don't like your blonde joke. Okay, well then edit out the blonde joke. I don't like your women jokes. Well then edit it out, okay? But just eat the meat and spit out the bones. Come on, what's your problem? All right? Get some of our debate tapes. Those are really good to get people saved, or other topical tapes. We have all sorts of information on other series. We just want to win folks to the Lord. You could have a dino night here at your church. Like a vacation Bible school, all wrapped up in a 3-hour program. Get every kid in Pensacola to come and teach them the truth about dinosaurs. Get a truck or a trailer or a tent and travel around and speak on dinosaurs. Hey, you looking for a ministry? This needs to be done desperately. Get yourself a big tent you can set up in somebody's yard and invite all the neighbor kids in and teach them about creation. That's what Chuck Holcomb does full time. Travels and speaks on creation. Sets up his tent and brings kids in. They have hundreds of kids get saved. You can call Chuck up in Alabama, get him to come to your church. He'll do a great job. You can get a bus, like this guy in Australia did. Put creation bus on the side. Filled the inside with fossils and posters all around the walls. He stops in little villages all over and brings everybody on board and teaches about creation. A traveling portable museum. Well, you could do that. Everybody ought to find something to do. Get some puppets or flannel graph or find something. Man, there's a war going on. This is where the battle is being fought in the 21st century, right here. Evolution and creation. Everyone should find something to do to get involved. Now, if you're here today and you're not a Christian, first thing you need to do is give your heart to the Lord and get saved. If you are a Christian, you ought to find something to do for the Lord. Let's all stand, bow our heads, and close our eyes, and let's pray. This is Kent Hovind from Pensacola, Florida. I'm here in Canada at the 100 Huntley Street program. Several years ago, I think 1994, when I was here on the program, I brought my book from Dr. Roy Mackal on a living dinosaur. And Cal, who's sitting here beside me, Bombay, said, he said, well, I was in Africa and I saw something like that, a dinosaur. And I turned to this page, page 256 in Roy Mackal's book. And Cal, you said, hey, I saw one of those. Would you take just a few minutes and tell the folks what you saw and, you know, where you work, and if they can get a hold of you for any questions, and just describe what you saw.
Well, it was probably one of the most startling experiences I've ever had. It was about in 1963, I think. And I was on my way through the old roads of Kenya back to Nairobi to pick up a car. So I was taking this old Chevrolet that was almost too big for those roads, for the potholes, and I was going rather slow. And it was a hilly country near a place called Muhoroni. And that's down in the Rift Valley, but a hilly part of the Rift Valley. As we came up over the brow of the hill, my wife was with me. And suddenly laying there in front of us, right across the road, 7, 8, 9 feet long, was what I thought at first was a crocodile. And I thought, no, it can't be a crocodile. This is a dry part of the country. And then as I looked at it, we slowed down and stopped the car, actually, and stood and sat there for 10 minutes looking at this. And as I looked at it, I thought, this is... I mean, the actual word prehistoric went through my mind. I said, this can't be real. I've seen pictures like this, but not quite like this one. Anyway, from the tail right through to the back of its head were I don't know what you call them.
Serrations, ridges.
Ridges, like triangulars, perfect triangles, all the way from the tail to the head to the tail. And it was just laying squatted down on the road, seeming to sun. And so I looked at the thing for 10 minutes. I could shoot myself for not having my camera with me that day,
right.
But I wish I had. But there it was, and I had never seen anything like it, and nor before nor since. And I've asked people. In fact, I went to the Natural Museum and said, have you ever seen anything or heard of anything in Kenya of this nature? And they said, no, there's nothing like that alive today. I said, I saw something. And I argued with them really rather intently for a while, and they said, well, it must have been a figment of your imagination. Well, my wife and I both saw it, and we asked for several years, we asked anybody if they'd ever seen anything like that. Nobody had, nor have I since. But there it was, laying on the road. After about 10 minutes, it stood up, not quite as high as this drawing, but it just kind of wandered off into a very dry part of the country, bushy a little bit, not much greenery. It was a dry time of the year, and it just took off. And Mary and I just kind of looked at each other in wonder, saying, what in the world is this thing?
What color was it?
It was kind of dusty gray.
Okay. Could you see the eyes?
Yeah, they'd blink. In fact, it turned its head and looked at us. You know, it didn't seem to be afraid of us.
Could you tell from the pupil of the eyeball, was it slotted or round? Or couldn't you see that? Not that close?
I don't think I was close enough to see that.
Was the shape of the snout like a crocodile?
More like a crocodile than a hippo, say.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
It had a long face. Now, some of the African people I asked, they said, oh, that was a monitor lizard. Well, I said, impossible. I've seen many monitor lizards. I've never seen one 9 feet long.
Right.
Never as long as that. And I've actually killed a couple of monitor lizards with my car. And they're smooth-skinned and no ridges in the back. I know a monitor lizard when I see one. This was not a monitor lizard. This had those ridges down its back.
Could you tell if it had smooth skin or scales?
It looked kind of bumpy, more like an alligator.
Right, okay.
On the sides. I don't think it had scales.
Okay.
I can't really be sure.
All right, well.
It's been a lot of years ago. This is 1997.
I understand. Well, I've been saying for years there's a few dinosaurs still alive, and your first thought in your mind was something prehistoric, huh?
Well, of course, I have been preconditioned by all the education that I'd had up till that time that these things don't exist.
Whatever it is, it can't be a dinosaur. That's the first thought most people have.
Well, I considered it had to be some kind of a lizard.
Sure.
And because, you know, you have lizards from this size, of the little gecko lizards, right up to monitor lizards.
All right, now you work here at 100 Huntley Street, and what's the phone number here? So if they have any questions, they can call and ask for Cal Bombay.
My phone number is area code 905-335-7100, extension 3206.
All right, well, call them up if you don't believe it.
I saw it. I mean, a lot of
some still alive.
When I saw this picture, I thought, that's what I saw. I mean,
all right, let's get them to zoom in on this picture if you can real quick, and we'll close out with that. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to help. Give us a call if you want more information on dinosaurs. You let us know, and we'll be glad to send you our videotape on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. So that's what you saw that day, 1962.
That's as close as anything I've ever seen.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate the time, and God bless you.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
This is a giant squid of the species Architeuthis ducks. It came ashore on November the 22nd, 1979 at St. Brendan's on Collier's Island in Bonavista Bay, Newfoundland. It's an immature female. It is a small female, but it is a giant squid. I believe the giant squid reach an approximate maximum size of something like 150 feet. If this is 20 feet long, well then it's almost 8 times longer than this in overall length. And that's a big squid.
In 1976, just 30 miles off the Lizard in Cornwall, 2 fishermen, George Vinnican and John Cox, also met a monster.
Well, it went steaming 30 miles off, 25 to 30 miles off. Saw what I thought was an upturned boat on the horizon.
So we went over to investigate. When we got closer, we could see it wasn't an upturned boat. It was something that, well, neither of us had seen before. So it was dark in color and had sort of humps on the back. I should say it was, well, between 15 and 18 feet in length and rising above the sea about 3 feet. It was a flat, calm day. There was no disturbance on the sea at all.
When we got up closer, well, a little closer, I came astern, to our amazement, up out the water about 3 feet from this body, head appeared out the water. And it was a, well, thing I've never seen before after about 40 years of sea. And it gradually sank in the water and disappeared. But after talking about it, the only thing we could explain it was very much like a prehistoric animal.
Good morning and welcome to Ovi's Open Line program. I do believe that's what's going on in here this morning. Therese, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
We're talking about the Ogopogo today. A lot of people in the area have seen it. The legend goes on for many years, and we'll be talking to some experts. I believe we've got Arlene Gall coming in. Arlene wrote a book on it.
That's right.
But we're going to go to the phone lines right now. Line 2, good morning.
Hello there.
Mr. Puglish.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
You want to know about Ogopogo?
I certainly do.
Yeah, okay. I had a taxi and I took the passengers to the hospital, and then I was coming down Abbott Street.
And I got far as about here. I looked to the lake. I was surprised, and I seen this thing come out of the water. Well, it's like a horse's head with the kind of horns on it. Well, he was huge, you know, standing up there. Oh my, just like a, you know, like a big serpent. Then another fellow come behind me, and he says, "What are you looking at?" He says, "I see no Ogopogo over there." And he says, "Where? Over there." He says, I had the door open in the car, and stepped out just a little bit, and we slipped back in the water, see? And he said, "Gee, look at the big waves there." And all we can see is big waves going down there to Fred's place where he had the boat rental. And they disappeared, see? And then I got all excited. I got in the car and I pulled to the willow end, and I told the people, I says, they were having breakfast, "I just seen Ogopogo." And they says, "What the heck you been drinking, eh?"
Line 4, go ahead, please.
Hello, John.
How are you?
I'm not too bad.
Good. Are you going to give me your name?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Tell me about
I saw Ogopogo off of Sarson's about 4 years ago.
Okay, you don't want to give your name on the air.
No, I don't.
You've told some people, obviously.
Yes.
Are you afraid that they might think you're a little bit of a...
Well, I had some strange phone calls. And
I get them every day. That's what they pay me for.
Well, I don't get paid for them, so I don't really want any more, thank you.
We were up on the beach having a picnic, and my daughter was on the swings when I saw this creature underneath the wharf there. And when I turned around and saw it and realized that it was the legendary Ogopogo, I just freaked out. I grabbed the baby and ran down to the beach, and I guess I yelled over and over, "That's him."
She was screaming like anything. She just couldn't believe it. Her face was red. And,
was fishing or whatever it was doing, and it was there for quite some time. Then it straightened out and went along those poles, and as it traveled along, just the three humps were showing, and they were from one of those end of those poles to the other in the space the three humps were. It traveled along the beach till about the corner over there, and then it turned and went straight across the lake.
All right, we're going to break from the phone calls right now and introduce to you someone that's well known in the Okanagan Valley, Arlene Gall. Arlene has written a book on the Ogopogo. Good morning, Arlene. How are you?
Good morning, John. Morning, Teresa.
Good morning, Arlene.
How many sightings have you documented?
Literally hundreds. Literally hundreds.
When was the first sighting?
The very first sighting was in 1852. The first documented sighting in 1852.
Okay, 1852, and it's now 1980. Do we take it to mean that there must be more than one Ogopogo?
There definitely appear to be more than one.
There has been a film that was made, and I think it was back in 1968. It's pretty hard not to believe when you see it right in front of your eyes. Tell us about that film this morning.
The Folden film was taken in 1968 by a gentleman by the name of Art Folden. He was returning from a trip to his home in Chase. And as he neared Peachland area, he spotted an object out on the lake, and he said to his wife, "Look, there's Ogopogo." And she laughed at him. And he got out and started filming the creature. And what we see in the film is a large animate object moving through the water, surfacing and submerging at various speeds and at various times. And it also shows the creature taking off at very high speed, producing a massive wake. And this is the footage in the film that I like very much, because you see a creature just pushing water, something terrifically, with a massive wake in front, just creating huge wave action. This is believability on my part.
Have there been any recent sightings?
We've had approximately 7 to 8 sightings this year, but we have one that has been the very best sighting.
Why?
And it was the Rieger family.
It was a beautiful day. The water was just as calm as glass. And I just took a look across. I could see a big wave coming. And at that time, I just didn't take much notice of it. And it kept coming closer. And I thought to myself, why would there be a wave coming if there's no wind or anything? So I called to my son. I says, come on back here. And I says, take a look and see if you think, what the heck's coming down the lake here? So he took a look at it, and he says, gee, I don't know. So we had his grandson. My grandson was along, too. And he said, hey, Grandpa, he says, that's the Ogopogo. It would have ran right into us, but we had to weir the boat off alongside, and then we followed it alongside for about, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And I'd say the monster was possibly 14 to 16 feet long, which was above water, sticking above about 3 feet. And had quite a hump on the front shoulders and had a hump on the back where the tail went. And I'd say the tail was approximately, probably 30, 40, maybe 50 feet because we couldn't see the end of it. But he did have a long tail. He had 4 legs, and I'd say the monster weighed approximately maybe 30 ton.
And his head in the front was moving from side to side. It seemed like he was looking for fish or feeding or something like that, and he was stirring up a tremendous amount of water.
If I would have never seen it, I would have never believed it. And actually, I don't care if anybody believes me or not, but I've seen this animal, and I know it's here, and I know it's a tremendous-sized animal.
It was some sort of we call it a monster fish, for lack of a better word, but it was approximately 30 to 35 feet in length, and its head was protruding out of the water, and you could see the flagell action of the tail and the waves going beyond it. And I took 2 pictures of it.
Well, you said it was roughly similar to this. What was different?
Similar to this. I couldn't see these fins on the side,
okay,
because they were, if that is the fish that I saw, or whatever, they were not within sight. I mean, I could only see the head and the neck and like the upper part of the body.
What you're about to hear is an audio tape made of apparently the roaring of the creature in the Congo swamp the natives call Mokele Mbembe, which would be one of the few living dinosaurs. The sound appears to have a flapping or slapping sound near the end of each roar. Some have speculated that this may be similar to the gecko lizard that makes a little roaring sound, and then the flap of skin under its throat slaps back against the throat, making the slapping sound. That's the best so far we have on this. If you hear any more, please let me know. Hope you enjoy it. Well, this is Kent Hovind. It is August 31st, 1993. I'm sitting here at the Antique Quest in Winchester, New Hampshire, with Sandy Mancy. It's good to see you again, Sandy. I saw you back in '92. And Sandy is the one that saw Champ. Her picture appears on the cover of the book by Joseph Zarzinski. This took place. Why don't you tell us when it was and where you were and just a little bit about it?
I was in Vermont, on the Vermont side, and my husband, we weren't married at the time, my fiance and my children, we were exploring the lake. I grew up in that area. And we were just exploring the lake, sitting there, enjoying the peace and quiet. And my husband had gone back to the car to get the camera, and while he was gone, there was a disturbance in the lake, and I looked out, and I thought perhaps there was a school of fish, maybe a scuba diver or something, and then the head and the neck broke the surface of the water, and the head picked up, and the neck, and the back, and I knew it wasn't a fish.
Right. Well, great. And some people said I heard somebody told you that they thought maybe it was a duck.
I think it's about a 2,000-pound duck.
2,000-pound duck. When we were at the church, when you came to hear me speak up in wherever that was, New Hampshire, Dublin, New Hampshire, I had all my dinosaurs on the table, and you immediately picked out this one as Champ, but you said it was a little different, what you saw.
Yes, what I saw is the neck was not near as long, and the head is shaped right, like a horse head, but the neck is not near as long.
Okay, now there are 3 or 4 different types of swimming dinosaurs that bones have been found of. There's the chronosaur, which has a huge neck, the plesiosaur, which you're holding, and then there's the elasmosaur. Had a shorter neck, and the head is at a right angle to the body instead of in line with the body. There may be others, of course, undiscovered yet, but get that where they can see it on the camera.
I think this more, but
Shorter
maybe
neck.
with a shorter neck, or it could be that the neck wasn't all out of the water too.
Okay. All right, so this was back in 1977. How many other people do you know or have you talked to that claim they have seen it also?
I have spoken with probably about 6 different people who have seen it. And all of our accounts are very, very similar. So we all can't be crazy, and we all can't be telling something that maybe we didn't see. But they're all very, very similar. The shape of the head, the neck, just the massive size of it.
Picture of Champ up here on the wall. And tell me about the old gentleman that came and looked at it.
I was standing here at the counter, and an older gentleman came in, and he's staring at the picture, and he's staring, and he asked me what it was, and I told him it was Champ from Lake Champlain. And he went on to tell me that he had never told a soul this, and he was in his 80s. I think he said he was 89 or 87. And he told me about when he was a young man, and he went fishing with his grandfather up in Lake Champlain, up by the Volg Bay, that area, up by Thai.
He grew up on the lake?
Yeah, he grew up on the lake.
Okay.
And he told me of a time that he and his grandfather were out fishing, and this monstrous big thing, he said, came out of the water. And his grandfather told him that it was Champ, and that he wasn't to tell anybody due to the fact that they would think that they were insane. And so all those years, he never told a soul about it. I was the first person he told, and he said to me, I was not insane, my grandfather was not insane. We saw a living, breathing dinosaur.
Right.
And I was like, hallelujah! Yes!
More testimony.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, other people have seen it, and they come to you and say, hey, you know.
Yes, and I appreciate that, because it gives me vindication. You know? I'm not crazy. I'm not prefabbing it. This is what I saw. This is what they saw, and we all saw something. And what? Someday maybe the lake will give up her secret. Who knows? But let's not kill it.
Don't kill it. No. Great. Well, thank you so much. You got customers here. We better let you go.
It's a shark! God darn, some white things all come out of the water. Ooh, what the heck ever it is. Hey, there's one under. Oh, the trail went under right there, Dad.
You see those binoculars?
Huh?
You see those binoculars?
It was a shark.
No, it's not a shark. Something just come up there.
I've seen it, Dad.
It's gone.
It went under.
I think we just see Champ.
What's Champ?
Lake Champlain monster. It's gone, Clayton.
I know.
I shouldn't have looked at it with the binoculars so long. I should have got the camera.
Oh, it went under and swam away.
He started way the heck out there. You know, that buoy, just past that buoy when that sailboat went by.
I know.
When I was looking at it with the binoculars, I thought it was just a log. It run over, but it went right from that buoy all the way inland, went underneath right in there.
Well, thank you for watching this videotape. For those of you that joined us by video, we want to let you know that you're welcome to give us a call, and we'll try to answer any questions we can. We want to help strengthen your faith. It's interesting to learn things about dinosaurs and about creation and evolution, but it's much more important to know that you personally are going to heaven. If you've never trusted Christ as your Savior, or if you're not sure you're going to heaven, let me share with you very quickly and simply what the Bible says about how to go to heaven. When I was a sophomore in high school in East Peoria, Illinois, I had been raised in a variety of different churches, but I didn't know if I was going to heaven. I didn't know if I had ever trusted Christ. I wasn't saved. February 9th, 1969, my friend said, Kent, you're a sinner. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, according to the Bible, you deserve to die and go to hell. I said, yes, sir, I know that too. He said, but God wants to give you a gift, eternal life. You deserve eternal death. God wants to give you eternal life. I said, well, how do I get it? He said, watch this. Romans chapter 10 and verse number 13 tells us, for whosoever means anybody, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. It doesn't say you might be saved. It says you shall be saved. And so February 9th, 1969, I bowed my head and I said, Lord, I'm a sinner. I know you died for me on the cross. And I'd like you to forgive me. I'd like you to come live in my heart and save me and forgive me. Make a new person out of me, would you please, Lord? If you just receive Christ, you've got God's promise. You're going to heaven. And God's promises last forever. Once you receive Christ, now that makes you born into God's family. That's just the beginning. Growing requires a lot of work. You're going to need to read your Bible, go to a good Bible-believing church, start telling others about Jesus, and there's all sorts of things. And I'll be glad to be a help if I can be. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoy this video series.